Okay, folks, please take a plate and a cup and look for a seat. And Bob Russell, please make your way to the front. While Bob is walking toward the front, please check your tickets. Make sure you're in the right retirement event. This is Bob Russell's retirement event, so please check your tickets. This is Bob Russell's retirement event. And in 1 minute, I'm going to start my opening remarks. So in 1 minute, I'm going to start my opening remarks. So please take your seat. All right, and Bob, please come to the front. Don't sit in the back. Come on, Bob. This is your party. Come on. All right. We're not going to start until Bob comes to the front and takes his seat. You ready? Take a picture. All right. So what? All right, in case you didn't get the memo, my name is Uriah Kim, and I'm the 9th president of the Graduate Theological Union. We are here in the ballroom, and many others are joining in from other places around the world via Zoom to celebrate an extraordinary man and his 40 years of labor of love for truth, wisdom, and service. Most clearly evident in the creation and flourishing of the Center for Theology and Natural Sciences and the significant and varied contribution to the learning community on Holy Hill. Robert John Russell, affectionately known simply as Bob. I don't know what comes to your mind when you think of Bob, but for me, he reminds me of Bob the Builder, the much beloved character from the British animated children's television series my kids used to watch when they were young. And I had no choice but to watch it. In each episode, Bob the Builder and his gang helped with projects, constructions, renovations, and repairs as needed, while maintaining a friendly, caring, and productive work environment. I don't think I need to explain or convince anyone in the audience gathered today why I see Bob the Builder in the man we are here to celebrate and adulate. Bob received a Bachelor of Science in Physics, if that wasn't enough, with a minor in Music and Religion from Stanford University in 1968. A Bachelor of Divinity, that's what it was called, but it's Master of Divinity now. And Master of Arts in Theology from Pacific School of Religion in 1972, where he met his wife, Charlotte. And I think Charlotte is here somewhere. Okay, there she is in the back. Yes. After receiving his PhD in physics from the University of California, Santa Cruz in 1978, he returned to Berkeley and founded the Center for Theology and the Natural Sciences, perhaps the first of its kind. I don't know about you, but based on my experience, knowledge, and observation, it's not easy to create something ex nihilo and to sustain it for 40 years. I know God did it once and sustained the universe for 6,000 years according to the literal translation or interpretation of the creation story, and about 14 billion years according to the natural sciences. I don't know how you're gonna put those two together, but anyway. Now, I could list the significant grants, partnerships, achievements, and activities of CTNS during its first 40 years. In particular, the generous long-term support from the Templeton Foundation. But I will let others talk about that tonight. I will just add that because of Bob's vision, work, commitment and humility, the CNN is well established for future venues of research and study, with Braden Mohawk as the next director of CTNS. Braden is here somewhere. There he is. And I will also let others talk about how the GTU has been central to Bob's professional life, or about his commitment, support, and contribution to the GTU's institutional mission, to the learning community on Holy Hill, and its academic program. But I would like to mention that when CTNS became an academic unit of the GTU, he has brought to the GTU the journal Theology and Science, the Ian G. Barbour Chair, and 2 fellowships, namely the Russell Family Research Fellowship in Religion and Science and the Charles H. Towns Graduate Student Fellowship. Moreover, in my opinion, the best gift Robert John Russell gave to the GTU and also to the world is his contribution as a scholar, faculty, and mentor in teaching multiple generations of students on Holy Hill over the 40-year period, and supervising and working closely with 37 doctoral students. And I know many of them are here tonight. Tonight, I want all of us to take a step back, relax, and admire and focus on...
Recording in progress.
You missed all the good part here. And focus on Robert John Russell, Bob the Builder, Bob the Man, and ask, what kind of man would think of creating a center that promotes a dialogue between theology and the natural sciences, and then build it in an ecumenical, interdisciplinary, interreligious learning environment? Now, we could spend all night thinking about that question, but I would like to share with the audience 2 observations about Bob. First, he's like a child, having a never-ending sense of wonderment and pureness, not naivete, but pureness to his exploration, and therefore sees and imagines things and ideas most adults give up doing prematurely. I would like to share an episode from Jesus' ministry, someone Bob faithfully and enthusiastically follows like a child. And I quote, "At that time the disciples came to Jesus and asked, 'Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' He called Bob, whom he put among them and said, 'Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like Bob, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.'" And the quote, Matthew 18, 1-3, NRUV. For those who are not familiar with that version, it is the New Revised Uriah version. Second, Bob cares for and is profoundly committed to truth, believing that all verifiable facts and knowledge from all disciplines lead to truth. And therefore, he feels very comfortable and free to explore multiple disciplines and let them engage one another, in particular, theology and the natural sciences. I suspect his overarching principle he follows is, again, something Jesus taught him well. And I quote, "If you continue in my word, you're truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." John 8, 31-32, NRSV, New Revised Standard Version. Finally, I am delighted to announce for the first time tonight that the GTU's Board of Trustees has approved a recommendation from the interim dean, Elizabeth Pena, who regrets not being here in person. She really wanted to be here. You know that, Bob. To name Robert John Russell as GTU Professor Emeritus of Theology and Science upon his retirement. And I would like to quote a comment from Elizabeth when she was making a case to the board for the emeritus status for Bob, and quote, "Some of Bob's contributions to the GTU include his insistence that our common work is not only interreligious, but is also interdisciplinary. Science and art," Bob emphasized, "represent paths for people from all religious traditions and none to inquire about the ineffable and to come to terms with life itself. Bob has been a supportive and sensitive colleague to fellow faculty. He has been an astute advisor, caring mentor to multiple generations of students. In fact, he explained to me that he considers his role as a professor to be his calling, his vocation." End of quote. Congratulations. Moreover, Elizabeth collected congratulatory remarks from your colleagues at the GTU, printed them, and put them in this folder and gave to me to give to you tonight. All right. Okay, congratulations, Bob. And now I happily turn over the mic to tonight's Master of Ceremony, the one and only Dr. Ted Peters.
From Silverton, Uriah. Thank you so much. That was eloquent and thorough and very fitting. And you got out all the data. Scientists like data. You got out all the data in a very eloquent fashion. This is a threshold moment, actually, Bob's retirement, because it started with a vision, as you said, created ex nihilo, providentially watched over for 4 decades, and now it gets handed on for further growth. Beautiful, beautiful. I want to read a letter. Not everybody who wanted to come tonight was able to. So I've got some NASA stationery here. And if you know anything about Mars exploration, well, Christopher McKay is our Mars man at NASA. Dear Bob, on the occasion of your retirement as the director of the Center for Theology and the Natural Sciences, I would like to thank you for involving NASA Ames in CTNS activities. You first contacted me in the late 90s through your daughter Lisa, who has done a high school internship with a group at Ames. The timing was very good at NASA because NASA had just launched its astrobiology program, and the ethical aspects of human activities in space were part of that agenda. Through you, our group at NASA Ames participated in CTNS activities. CTNS classes visited Ames, and I formed important and continuing intellectual collaborations with Ted Peters, Richard Randolph, Brian Green, and many others. A small gift. By the way, he sent it by Uncle Sam's postal mail, and I haven't been able to find it either. Neither has Braden. But he sent a gift, probably a Mars rock. A small gift. Thank you for helping NASA in this area. Best wishes for the future. Fair winds and following seas. Christopher P. McKay, Space Science Division. What this testifies to, among other things, is that we don't just talk about being interdisciplinary, Bob, in ways that many of us have sought to but didn't quite make established. The interdisciplinarity in which scientists have actually participated with theologians in constructing a meaningful worldview. And in this room, the dinner board room, over the 4 decades, many scientists have spoken in this room, not only theologians, thanks to Bob's creative initiative. Well, Arthur Holder has wanted to be here tonight, and Arthur is kind of like a utility infielder. Whenever there's an open position, he plays it. But I don't understand, has Arthur had a bad night last night, and what's going to happen now? Do you know?
He is on the Zoom call, and he's going to be able to participate that way.
Is he, Arthur, are you there?
You're going to let me talk, Ted.
Oh! Okay, Arthur, you'll tell us about your misfortune as well as any other good things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Dean, I'm sorry you spent the night in the emergency room at the hospital, but we're glad to have you here. Thanks. Arthur Holder.
Thank you, Ted. Yeah, it was night before last, and I was in the emergency room just to get an MRI. So we're awaiting results. You know,
I withdraw my sympathy.
But I am delighted to have this opportunity to say a few words, is what I was invited to do. It's hard to say a few words about Bob Russell, but I'm going to try to do that. And I want to talk about something that I think will connect all of his amazing accomplishments together. The reason I'm thinking of this is because for the past few years I've been co-teaching the seminar on interdisciplinarity that we require for all entering students in the PhD program at the GTU now. And one thing we talk about in that course is the whole concept of academic disciplines, what they are and how they come to be. Now, there are various definitions of an academic discipline, but most people say that any discipline needs to have some core components. You've got to have a designated place in the curriculum, faculty positions, advanced degree options, recognized research methods, a journal, conferences, and a wider community of scholars. And that's pretty much Bob Russell's CV, right? I mean, that's what he's been doing for the last 50 years. Theology and science is a robust and thriving academic discipline today, and a lot of that is due to the work of Robert John Russell. Thanks to Bob and to those he has enthusiastically enlisted to help him in the cause, the GTU curriculum has a concentration in theology and science. We have the E.G. Barbour Professorial Chair, MA and PhD degree options with fellowship support, the groundbreaking methodology of CMI, and if you don't know what that is, it's creative mutual interaction. We have the journal Theology and Science, a series of conferences that have attracted scholars from all over the world and resulted in numerous publications, and several academic generations of GTU graduates, many of whom are here tonight, who've gone on to teach theology and science at institutions throughout the United States and in several other countries. So the academic discipline of theology and science has been shaped and sustained by Bob Russell's blood, sweat, and tears over the last 40-plus years. Amen. The future of the discipline is bright thanks to his pioneering work and visionary perspective. The GTU and the wider academy celebrate his accomplishments and give thanks for his dedication, and I am personally grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with him in many, many ways during the time that I served as Dean of the GTU and before and after that as we've worked with many students together. So Bob, it's been more than 40 years for you and CTNS. And just about halfway through that span of time, you invited me to join the CTNS Board of Directors. I quickly discovered, as I already knew, that that was not because of my expertise in either theology or science, but in my administrative role as dean, I had the opportunity to help smooth some of the path that eventually led to the full incorporation of CTNS into the GTU. And along the way, I learned so much from you not only about theology and science. You taught me about responsible interdisciplinary scholarship, about sustaining an institutional vision, and certainly about persevering through creative adaptation to the ever-changing circumstances. I'd also say, as a teacher and as an advisor, you've been a passionate advocate for your students' success. And as a colleague, you've always been ready to do your share and then come back and do some more after that. Most importantly, you've been a steadfast friend to me and to so many others far and wide. Your faith in God and your commitment to the ideals of servant leadership have given us an inspiring example to follow. So now I wish you and Charlotte a retirement full of all the things that you enjoy most, and I do hope that will include spending some more time with us at the GT. Heartfelt congratulations, my friend, best wishes, and deep thanks.
Thank you so very much, Arthur, and even when you're not feeling tip-top, your eloquence is still tip-top. Is Rita with us? She's not here, or she is here? Oh, she's not. Rita Sharma, I was scheduled, I don't know what the situation is. Bob and I have really enjoyed getting to know Rita Sharma over recent years. Rita is currently chair of our Department of Theology, Systematic Theology and Ethics, and she also likes theology and natural science, both in its Christian form and in its Hindu form. So we did have an opportunity a few years ago to try a trialogue between natural science, Christian theology, and Hindu theology. We had a ball, actually. So are we going to hear from Rita? Yes or no?
I guess not.
Maybe not. All right. Just assume that Rita would have said really nice things. Jogyam Kim Woody. Dr. Kim is one of Bob's former students. Bob and I actually have overlapped in a number of our students over the years. Sometimes he's chair, and I'm second, and I can't remember who is who. A number of his students, as Uriah has already mentioned, have gone on to make the GTU very proud, and they are right here in this room, and a number of them have gone to South Korea. Dr. Kim is one of those. He just has a new position at Yonsei University in South Korea. He published an article in Theology and Science a year or two ago on astrotheology, a new field that's emerging here in Berkeley, and I've been to recent conferences in which the astrobiologists are reading Dr. Kim's article on astrotheology. And so that kind of makes Bob and I think, hey, our work is worth it here. And so Dr. Kim is here from South Korea, and I would like to give the microphone to you, please.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Ted, thank you for your impressive introduction of this humble person. Also, I would like to give special thanks to Dr. Bob Russell for inviting me to this special event. Also, for giving me this privilege and honor to share my personal experiences with you. In my academic journey, Dr. Bob to take such a significant place that I didn't want to miss this event. And also, so I fly from Seoul, South Korea for this event. The COVID-19 couldn't stop me. It was about 20 years ago in 2002 that I first met Bob, if not in person. Back then I was reading his work on divination in the natural world while writing a term paper for the course entitled Science, Theology, and Ethics. Later, I came to know that this course was sponsored by the CTNS Global Project. Namely, I had been blessed by Bob's long-time commitment to science and dialogue, science and theology dialogue, even when I had no idea of his person. 5 years later, in 2007, I began my doctoral studies at the GTU. Ted was my advisor. If my memory is not wrong, it was in the very first meeting with Ted that I told him my theological interest in the idea of the kingdom of God. And then he told me that to delve into the dialogue between eschatology and science. Eschatology and science, I had never thought about it before. Ted was told me that Bob was working on that topic, and he encouraged me to engage in several programs at the CTNS. So I came to meet Bob for the first time in person. I still remember how happy he was when I informed him, or we had been discussing his work in my paper. From then on, Bob has been my beloved academic mentor, always generous and encouraging. During my academic doctoral studies, I really enjoyed working with Bob, Ted, and other colleagues at the CTNS, Oliver, Joshua, Adam, Braden, and Sung Hong, to name only a few. Oh, Brian, sorry. It is no wonder that most of my first academic achievements came out of the exciting seminar discussions and CTNS lab meetings, which were led by Bob and Ted. The CTNS Charlestown's Graduate Student Fellowship in 2008 and 2009 was one of the most memorable awards, for it gave me what any emerging scholar needs most, that is, confidence in one's own academic potentials. It was soon followed by unexpected award, my paper on Christian eschatology and dialogue with natural science, which was originally based on my working with Bob and Ted. The paper earned the International Society for Science and Religion, ISS, the first award in the ISS essay competition in honor of John Paul Kingman's 80th birthday. For this award, I feel grateful, especially to Bob, for he celebrated the award winning more frequently and more enthusiastically than anyone else. And Bob's recognition and celebration has been the enduring encouragement to my subsequent works in the field of science and religion. The same year, Bob invited me to respond to Tom Tracy at the J.K. Russell's Fellowship Forum. Bob's invitation excited me a lot, for it sounded like an invitation to debut and to the academic community. What I want to say is that Bob has always been kind and generous to me ever since we met for the first time. Just like my father, I think my father is almost the same age as you. Bob was not just an academic mentor, he was also a warm-hearted pastor. Bob has provided me not only with philosophical, theological, scientific insights, but also with consistent support for my academic efforts. For the past 11 years after my graduation from the GTU, I asked him to write recommendation letters many times, but he never said no. Rather, every time Bob was eager to write the letter, as well as never forgot to encourage and comfort me with kind words. Without his consistent support, I would not have obtained the tenured faculty position, which I now started at Yonsei University. I do not know how to express my deep gratitude to Bob for that, but I want you to know that I always thank God for allowing me to know you and learn from you, to become friends with you, and to have mutually encouraging fellowship with you. And to come to know you has been one of the most wondrous blessings of God I had ever had. Final words. I still have many happy memories of your visit to South Korea, and especially at the Korean National Folklore Museum. And I wish you could visit Korea again, this time with Charlotte, and so that I can show you to the beautiful places in South Korea, and we can have more memorable experiences. Thank you. Best wishes.
Jennifer Davidson has a hand.
Jennifer Davidson has her hand. Dee Davidson?
I think she was clapping.
Oh, she was clapping.
I
No.
saw Rita on there.
All right, is Rita going to speak to us? Rita, can you hear me? Did you?
Yes, Ted, I can.
And are you ready to say something?
Oh, I'm always ready.
Well, then I will give you the floor, Rita. It's yours.
That's a dangerous thing to do, Ted.
No, it's not.
All right. Well, first of all, congratulations, Bob. Felicitations. What you have achieved in your career, in your professional life, in your mentoring, in terms of your collegiality, your collaboration, your publications, your scholarship. Most of us, as we say in the industry, can't touch your feet, but we aspire. You are such an inspiration in so many ways. One of the first things that happened after our Center for Karma Studies, where I was invited to be director, came to be, CTNS joined me. And while we were still negotiating on the letter of agreement for the Center for Karma Studies, you said to me, ask them to talk to me. Ask them why it is so valuable to them. And in the years since, in our conversation, I have become more and more convinced of the remarkable gift that CTNS has been in your leadership to the graduate development. I want to also say that, while your work, okay, I shouldn't criticize other people, but let me do a snide remark here. I've been interested in science and religion, particularly theology in the natural sense. I've been interested in that and researched it since graduate school. And one thing that bothered me about a lot of theologians working on this from the perspective of theology is that I took that and say, well, this is nice, but where's the scripture? Where is the theology? Where is the deep connection to theology? And so that kind of work is helpful, but it doesn't permeate the community, the beloved community. It doesn't permeate the tradition. Your work is remarkable because not only do you have a doctorate in physics and you bring that kind of intellectual rigor from the scientific world into your intersectional research with theology, you manage to do it in such a way that the faith tradition is compromised by this discourse and integration of scientific principles, insights, and facts into the greater discourse of theology. And that is a gift not only to your tradition, it's a gift to all of us who work in tandem with this, because it tells us that you can be faithful, have fidelity to faith, and yet be intellectually rigorous in your engagement with the natural sciences. Those of us in other traditions have learned from you in ways that inspire us and illuminate our work. In addition to this, I want to thank you for collaborating with me on my particular area of interest, which is environmental sciences and the humanities, and for participating in our sustainability initiative and conference presenting a paper, and also your publication, which is titled in the eschatological family of life on Earth, a Christian response to global climate change. Now, this excellent article has just been published. Our book, and I'm saying it, our book just came out 2 days ago. And so the volume that your chapter is in now looks like this. This is the volume, and it is in the United Nations. I'm going to touch screen share this document very briefly so that you can see your contribution to it. Hold on 1 second while I get it. Now, the thing is this, that there's a lot of books on religion and culture. Very few are interreligious, but theologically. So that is a gift from you and many of our colleagues at the GTU for this volume. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think, yes, here it is. Let me get you to the website of your wonderful contribution. There. You see it? Yes. Eschatological family of life on Earth, a Christian response to global climate change. Thank you so much. And this book is in the Springer United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So thank you for your contribution to all of these, interdisciplinary and interreligious efforts, collaboratively. And the final thing I want to say is simply that one of the highlights of my pedagogical experience at the GTU was teaching the course on natural science in interreligious perspective with you and Ted. It was one of the highlights, and I cherish it. I also cherish our friendship over all of these years. You are a gift to so many fields, and you are a gift to us personally. Thank you, Bob. Felicitations, congratulations. And I hope to continue working together.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sherman. Bob and I enjoyed teaching with you as well, as you know, I hope. Next is Kirk Victor McNally, and Kirk is one of Bob's students, one that he worked very closely with, and I'm trying to remember the physicist at the University of California that was on your committee.
Raymond Chow.
Raymond Chow was on the committee. This was serious physics. I sat there during Kirk's exam, just going like this. trying to keep up, Ted. At any rate, Kirk has really done some theoretical work that Bob has been very proud of. They co-authored some things, and I find frequently if I want a good quote, I go to what Bob and Kirk have put together. Kirk Victor McNally.
All right, thank you, Ted. So I first met Bob nearly 30 years ago. I was an eager young MDiv student at Princeton Seminary, hoping to do my PhD at the GTU. And I think you were giving a talk in New York City. I can't remember if it was Presbyterian, Fifth Avenue? Fifth Avenue Press. Yeah, so I was in Princeton. I took the train into Manhattan, attended Bob's lecture, and afterwards I made sure to ask the most informed, learned, smarty-pants kind of question that I could come up with, in hopes that I'd make a good impression, and I guess I did, because I was admitted to the GTU. I think that Bob may have been the first theologian I ever met whose wife was a minister. And in this regard, Bob and Charlotte have served as a role model couple for my wife Jennifer and myself. It was apparent after getting to know Charlotte and her work at First Congo in Berkeley that she and Bob not only enjoyed each other as people, but were also spiritual and intellectual partners who deeply valued each other's calling. Jennifer and I couldn't have hoped for a more inspiring example of the kind of egalitarian and cooperative marriage that we both knew we were aiming for, but had experienced very little of prior to that point in our lives. So thank you, both of you, for that. Now that it's nearly 30 years later, I feel the need to publicly confess to a rather manipulative strategy as a new doctoral student working with Bob. I'm not proud of it, but I've carried the burden this long, it's time to unburden myself. So, as an MDiv student at Princeton, I learned that my interest in all things computing was an asset, especially when it came to cementing relationships with professors who were desperate for computer help. Remember, this was the early 90s. Dell and Gateway were at the top of the game, and my educational elders were struggling to make the shift from typing to word processing. CTNS was growing when I arrived in Berkeley, and there was a constant need for purchasing new computers, upgrading existing ones, and connecting them all to the internet, which was also, of course, still in its infancy. My concerns about whether or not Bob would find my work as one of his doctoral students up to par were lessened significantly when he started inviting me over to his house to work on his computer. Nothing makes you indispensable like being the only person on the planet who knows how your advisor's files are organized. And then, when I started consulting with Charlotte about her computer needs, I knew I was safe. They couldn't get rid of me because their computer lives depended on knowledge that lived only in my head. So Bob and Charlotte, there it is, have come clean after all these years. Finally, I want to say that my identity as a theologian and a scholar have been deeply shaped by your work, Bob. By my conversations with you over the years and by our continued friendship. Bob has always been at once intellectually rigorous and at the same time gentle with his students, both steeped in and in love with religious tradition and unafraid to acknowledge its limitations, both professionally ambitious and intellectually humble in his engagement with others' work, and both capable of taking control of a situation and at the same time letting others steer the ship as befitted the occasion. Einstein said, and I'm paraphrasing loosely here, your education is what you have left after you've forgotten everything you learned at school. I hope I haven't learned everything, forgotten everything that you taught me, but I do know, and I will never forget, that whatever strengths I may have as a scholar and a teacher and a person are due in very large part to the influence of my Dr. Father, Robert John Russell. So thank you, Bob.
Thank you so much, Chris. I want to introduce Adrian Wired. You might not know Adrian, but let me see if I can remember the story correctly. And
Ted, we're going to take a quick break.
oh, we're going to take a quick break. Adrian, hold on. It's not your turn to speak yet, Bob. Adrian, and I gather we're going to have a videotape from Adrian. A lot of you might not know Adrian, and here a little bit of factual background. He's a child prodigy. I don't know very many of those in my life. At age 18, a guy named Bill Gates picked him up and said, would you come help me in Seattle? And so Adrian helped make Bill Gates become a success and retired at the age of 27. And then he telephoned Bonnie, who was sitting back here one day. Now, Bonnie was Bob's beloved assistant for many years, oiling all the gears in CTNS to make sure everything ran. Quickly, what did Adrian say on the phone?
Hi everybody, I'm Bonnie Justin. I haven't answered the phone. I heard this man with a British accent basically saying he wanted to invest in the Center for Theology and the Natural Sciences. And I thought, this sounds very suspicious. I don't know what year it was, Adrian, you probably remember. Who calls up an organization out of the blue and say they want to give them money?
Right, okay. At any rate, that began, thank you so much, Bonnie. That began a good friendship between Adrian and Bob and the center, and Adrian said something that nobody wanted to believe. He said the future is in computers. And he created Counterbalance, which is an online library for material in theology and science. Anyway, that's Adrian. And so Adrian, what would you like to say on this occasion?
Let's see if I can get this going.
Hi Bob, many congratulations on your retirement. It seems like only yesterday that we met, but in fact that was 25 years ago. And those were exciting times. I think we could all sense that we were at the beginning of something important, that the time was right for the connections between the sciences and theology to be investigated with a thoroughness and at a scale that hadn't been done before. And that good things would result from that investigation. And it helped that other people got the vision too, including funding sources like the John Templeton Foundation. And that led to things like CTNS projects being featured in Newsweek magazine and on PBS TV programs. Now, all these many years later, we do live in a world where those foundations of science and theology are firmly established in so many excellent books and journal articles. There's much about today's scientific and religious climate that I don't think we would have correctly predicted back then. And the future remains uncertain, but those foundations only ever need to be laid down once, and they are there largely thanks to you and your colleagues. So as you begin to pass on the mantle to the people who will build on what you've begun so well, I wish you all the best. Again, congratulations.
The next on our list is the Reverend Molly Basquette. Did I pronounce that correctly? Basquette. From First Congregational Church in Berkeley, and on and off over the decades I visited Bob and Charlotte at First Congregational. The Towns family was there, and so it was kind of my second church home for a number of years. Pastor Molly Basquette is now the lead pastor there, and I don't know her at all, except by reputation. Everybody thinks Pastor Molly is just great. So please meet Pastor Molly.
Well, I hope to keep my good reputation. To do that, I won't talk too very long. You know how preachers do go on and on. Bob, congratulations, and thank you for asking me to say a word today. You're not just a scholar and a teacher and a mentor, you're also a minister with a pastor's heart, with a very tender and loving heart. And you've done so much of your good work in places like this, high on hills, teaching other scholars, learning with other scholars, mentoring students. But you've also done a lot of your work down the hill. You've let it trickle down, as it were. You've let it leaven the loaf of people in the pews and given us a language and helped us overcome our own internal struggle and given us a way to talk about faith and science together with people of all faiths and people of no faith through a really dynamic time over the last 40 years. Through your sermons at our church, through your teaching, through your challenges to our church council and church-wide to address climate chaos and the climate crisis, you've helped us come to terms with science as a faith endeavor as well. Science as something that informs our faith and to which we bring our faith into. And the last 41 years has showed just how important that dialogue is. You've anchored us in the progressive Christian church when so many would divide us in an environment that, frankly, the East Bay, the Bay Area, is not that all receptive to faith. You've given us a foothold in a way of talking about faith in a meaningful way in science circles, in rational circles. I've been reading this week the book Sapiens by Yuval Harari. Anyone read that? And he says that what sets humans apart in our development, what separates us from the animals, is our ability to create fictions, and in fact to create gods. He says religion is our greatest invention, that and collaboration. And of course, like what keeps religion going is collaboration through the years. And here's a little bit of fiction that I was thinking about today. It's from C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. And Aslan the lion says to his people, "You would not have called to me unless I first called to you." And I believe that we didn't invent God. God invented us. And when we feel that we may have, in those moments when we're wondering, is this something in our minds or something in our hearts or something we made up to feel better, what we're hearing is just an echo of God's call to us since the moment we were created. We're responding to God's inventiveness. And Bob, you responded to God's inventiveness. I heard you just say to Bob Stump, another member of our church, when he asked how you got into this, you said, "I was trying to solve a problem." Because you were a physicist. And you were also a person of faith. And you solved that problem, or at least you're still working on it, which is what every good scientist and theologian does. You just keep working on it. But you didn't just solve it for yourself and make room for yourself. You did it for all of us. You did that work for all of us, consistently inviting more and more people into that. And you had great mentors. Charlie Towns was just mentioned. And the times when you and Charlotte drove the Townses to church from Lake Park, I'm sure you had many good conversations on that trip. Asking the most important fundamental questions about why we're here, what is real, what our purpose is, what our relationship is to creation, how to maintain a posture of wonder and gratitude toward all that is, no matter what happens. On church, we blessed you, me and Kelly, your other pastor, and we released you from your four-way covenant, which is a very unique UCC thing. Ask me about it later. And I said, you are released, but not just from the four-way covenant. You're in a liminal space. Liminal spaces, as we know from the natural sciences, are some of the most creative and fecund places, the places where lots of things grow. And so here you are, crossing over into a new space, and a new border, and a new edge. Because there's no retiring from the life of Christian discipleship. Probably doesn't even end when we die. So I look forward to the ways you'll continue your calling among us in your church, though that calling may change. I invite you to look up for new landscapes and new horizons. Have a posture of openness to the new ways in which God wants to serve you. God wants to use you. And of course, some of the old ways, like serving chancel communion to a small group after worship, people for whom that embodied way of being together, that taking in of bread and cup gives us energy, converts something solid into something invisible but energetic. You'll do that too. You once preached from our church's pulpit. You said these words: as the island of scientific knowledge expands, so does the shoreline where knowledge encounters mystery. The more we know about the universe, the more we encounter its true mystery and mystery's ultimate source, God. So with this awe that you have, that you gift us, with this tenderness and intellect, keep going, keep serving. We love you, we need you, and we hope you will always need us.
Do you want to know the address of her church?
2330 Durant.
Thank you, Pastor Raleigh. Do I understand now we have a video clip from Heather Templeton? Is that right? And on and off since the mid-1990s, CTNS has had a lot of interaction with the John Templeton Foundation, beginning with Sir John Templeton himself, son Dr. Jack, and now the next generation. And Heather Templeton has a video greeting, I believe.
She's Sir John's granddaughter.
Sir John Templeton's granddaughter, Heather.
President of the foundation.
Pardon?
President of the foundation.
And the current president of the John Templeton Foundation.
Good evening. I am Heather Templeton Dill, president of the John Templeton Foundation and granddaughter of Sir John Templeton. I'm honored to have the chance to provide my gratitude and congratulations to Bob Russell on the occasion of his retirement from Graduate Theological Union. Congratulations, Bob, upon a well-spent and exceptional career. As many of you know, my grandfather was a successful global investor. He decided to take what he earned and dedicate it to supporting scientific and spiritual progress. The vision he cast was ambitious, and he always knew that making real progress would be difficult and might take decades or even centuries. In the formative years of the John Templeton Foundation, Bob Russell was one of the key people that demonstrated to my grandfather that this vision could be achieved. Bob Russell and Sir John shared a belief in the possibility of creative, mutual engagement between science and theology. In Bob, a physicist and a theologian, Sir John saw a concrete example of this mutual engagement and a kindred spirit that could help him instantiate this vision. Together, Sir John and Bob aimed to galvanize a community of people that caught and shared that vision. One memorable program they created, Science and the Spiritual Quest, brought together many scientists who, like Bob, saw their religious and spiritual identity as deeply intertwined with their scientific work. When Sir John saw an article in Newsweek magazine about this program with the headline, "Scientists Find God," he was overjoyed. The early years of the John Templeton Foundation include numerous flagship programs that Bob Russell ran and championed. He has always been one of the rare individuals that can both execute programs with excellence and rally a community around a shared mission. And just like Sir John, he always aimed to broaden the impact of programs by emphasizing their interreligious and international dimensions. Personally, I have always appreciated the Science and Religion course program that Bob ran. As a one-time teacher myself, I have seen firsthand how asking questions in the classroom can open students' minds to new ideas and ways of thinking. Bob's work provided opportunities for a generation of students to be formed and shaped by a new narrative about science and religion. And most importantly, Bob was not satisfied to just have a top-down impact. He has always been a dedicated and skilled mentor, and he has left a lasting impact on a cohort of science and religion scholars. Real change happens at the level of relationships and individuals, and Bob's work is a ringing testament to that truth. The motto of the John Templeton Foundation has long been, "How little we know, how eager to learn." These words capture both the hope and humility of my grandfather, and they also characterize both the spirit of Bob Russell and the mark he left on those around him. Throughout his career, he opened up space for us to ask new kinds of questions and to consider a new and more fruitful way of engaging with both science and religion. Thank you, Bob, for the work you have done to bring my grandfather's vision to life.
Sir John's vision, which Heather mentioned, included a celebration of the Enlightenment and the achievements of reason which led to science, and there was a quality of science that Sir John admired, and that is, you don't have dogmatic prejudice on the front end, but rather you're humble before the facts. And a good scientist knows that, and Sir John wanted that to be true of theology as well. And that little item actually, in some ways, became a mark of the way Bob Russell would do theology. That is to say, he would ask honest questions, weigh the alternatives, and then argue for what would be the best. So Bob's vocabulary was slightly different from Sir John's, but that sense of humility before where the evidence takes you, that really, I think Heather was right, even though I'm saying it in slightly different words. Bob did carry out Sir John's mission, at least in that respect. I arrived in Berkeley before Bob did, 1978. And my abiding concern then was saving the planet from climate change and pollution and overpopulation and all of those kinds of problems which the scientists had pointed out. Everyone in the church was sound asleep with the exception of the World Council of Churches. And so I started looking around Berkeley for colleagues. I bumped into Karen LeBox on the street. And we met each other for the first time. And I said, Karen, these are the things I'm concerned about. She says, I'm concerned about those too. She'd gone to Harvard. I guess at Harvard they learn everything. You know? But as I searched around, there were very few people interested in the planet. one guy over at PSR named Phil Jorgensen, he went and retired and took his graduate students with him, and that left nobody. And the GTU, let's put it this way, slipped right through the Reagan administration. Wait a minute, let's not talk about that. Then Bob Russell shows up on campus, and he says, Ted, I'm starting this new organization called the Center for Theology and the Natural Sciences. He described what kind of work it might be doing, and would you please join our board of advisors? And he'd already gotten Claude Welch, who was then president and dean, and Derwood Foster, who was my favorite systematic theologian at the time at PSR, and we'd gotten them on board. And I said, no, I don't think so. And so a year went by because I'm still looking for people who want to save the planet. I don't want to do theoretical stuff. And after another year, of course, I didn't find anybody. Actually, just a slight footnote. Phil Jorgensen at PSR and one of his graduate students named Ken Buddigan and I, we did hold a conference. We published a book called The Cry of the Environment, etc. And then when they left, there was just absolutely nobody to talk to about these issues. So Bob came back a year later, and I've got no friends. And he says, Ted, do you want to join CTNS? And I'm a little more interested now. Tell me again what you're going to do. And I said, I really don't think I'm qualified to join CTNS. Well, why not? I said, well, I do theology and culture, and science and culture. And when the scientists are done, I look at the implications. I said, I don't know any Bunsen burner laboratory scientists. I never talked with those people. Well, he tried to encourage me, and then I said, well, Bob, to be honest with you, I'm a little frightened about this. Scientists scare me, frankly. I'm a theologian. Scientists scare me. So Bob says, well, why do scientists scare you? I said, well, because they know so much. Well, it's true. Scientists know a lot. But what do they know a lot about? Well, their specialization in science. Yeah, that's true. But, Ted, do you know anything? Well, yeah, I'm a specialist in theology. He says, do you think those scientists know anything about theology? Well, probably not. Well, then you're even, aren't you? Well, actually, Bob persuaded me, and at that point I came into the fold, but I had to learn a different way of thinking. I like those German systematic theologians, and Germans are lone wolves. And the Germans know everything, but they cheat. They get these doctoral students called docents, they send them to the library to read 20 books, and then they come back and they report to the theologian, and then the theologian writes, and it looks like the theologian knows everything. That was my model. But Bob's model was we work in teams, and we have people around the table, each one is an expert, and they contribute their expertise to a common question. Let me just say, that was the single most important thing I learned from hanging around with Bob as Bob was developing this as a method for CTNS, and we borrow this term from Imre Lakatos, as a progressive research program. Theology can be a progressive research program. What a neat idea. And so for me, that's, I think somebody earlier used the word blessing. I don't remember who it was, maybe Uriah. But I think of Irving Berlin's song, you know, I count my blessings instead of sheep when I'm going to bed. And So Bob jumping over that fence is one of the best blessings I have that I can count, and this is one of them. But I do want to say it didn't start off all peaches and cream. It took a while to get there. One of the first conferences we had, we brought in physicist David Bohm. And physicist David Bohm, widely known to physics people. I'd never heard the name before. So I quickly was reading his articles and a new book he had published before he showed up. And we met over at PSR, and I don't remember the name of the room where the people you would dance. What's the name of that building over there at PSR? Huh? Yes, it was in that building anyway. So Bob had invited physicists from Cal and Stanford, and there might have been 20 of them, 20 plus that came. And then he got theologians from the GTU and around the community. And I noticed that when we sat down, all the theologians sat on one side, and all the physicists were over on the other side. And then David Bohm's lecture was in the middle, and he gave his lecture. And when the lecture was over, there was time for question and answer. And I noticed the physicists would ask questions about physics. And the theologians, well, David Bohm was enough of a New Ager. He had apprenticed himself to Krishnamurti in the Theosophical tradition, which I knew a lot about. So I think I was among the questioners. The theologians would ask questions, but I noticed there was never any conversation between physics and religion. None. So I thought, oh, this is a bust. So as soon as everything was done, we thanked Dr. Bohm. The physicists get up and they come across the room with their hands out. Oh, thank you, theologians, for having us. This has been such a great discussion. And I wonder what happened. I don't know. But I think there was just a hunger for, we all know there's only one reality. And the physicists, they got to purchase on part of that reality. And those of us with spiritual sensibilities have a purchase on that reality. And somehow or other, couldn't explain it, it was coming together. And they loved it, and they loved it. Well, this method that I mentioned about teamwork actually matured first, at first I think with the Vatican. And Bob, along with Nancy Murphy and Bill Stager, was at the Jesuit school, and George Coyne, who then directed the Vatican Observatory in Rome, put together this almost 20-year project on God's action in the natural world, and we did actually sit down with some of the best physicists and biologists. We always had to have a Thomistic Roman Catholic philosopher there, and ethicists and theologians, and pounded out what I run into around the world. People say the best series, the best collection of scholarly papers in which it was really an interaction between scientists and theologians, and sometimes we didn't get anywhere. Well, let me say, most of the time we did. Let me tell you the story when we didn't. We were in Krakow. Oh, I want to mention this for Hermina's benefit. The question was neuroscience. Neuroscience and theology. We had 5 brain scientists there. And they made their presentations, and the theologians made their presentations, and there was no connection whatsoever. 2 days went by. We're getting nowhere. So Phil Clayton was there. He took over. He says, we got to figure out what's wrong. Here we are talking. There's no dialogue. And so they asked a couple of the brain scientists again, what are you doing? Tell us again. And after a while, the insight dawned. And one of the neuroscientists said, oh, you people want to understand human nature. we don't know anything about human nature, we just study how the brain works. Well, that's when you need a Thomistic Roman Catholic philosopher. Oh, all right. At any rate, be that as it may, that tells you that Bob was willing to deal with the tough problems. Not follow trails that have already been blazed, but start out brand new ones. And it's touch and go. It's trial and error before you finally get some kind of movement. So I just want to say, academically, learning how to work in teams was really important for me, and it's had a big influence on what I do down to the present day. Bob and I became friends, and of course friends with Charlotte. Over the years, Charlotte and I sometimes would talk on the phone about pastoral issues, and but it wasn't infrequent when my phone would ring in the middle of the day. Dad, this is Bob. Yep. Well, I'm reading this in Paul Tillich's Systematic Theology, Volume 2. Would you please get it out, look at page 56? We read the sentence, and Bob says, what do you think Tillich means by that? Well, we talk about it for a little while, and hang up. Hour later, phone rings again. Dad, this is Bob. We go to page 57. And what I loved about this was you could tell Bob, he wasn't just learning. He wasn't just reading to find out what was there. No, every one of these thoughts got processed and reprocessed, and the implications drawn out. He never won a prize for speed reading, that's for sure. But those were my conversations with Bob, but Charlotte and I shared a lot with regard to pastoral ministry, and we had our conversations, not as many, but we had those from time to time as well. But we did develop a warm friendship, and we went through some sorry times together. Believe it or not, we each caught the same disease separate. I'll spare you the details. But we have a doctor in common, Paul Lang, at the University of Washington in Seattle, in the medical school there. And sometimes Paul would call both Bob and I, we became his patients. Then we'd go over things, and Paul would say, well, Bob, I'm suffering from this, this, and this. And I don't know if he told you what Ted was suffering from, but be that as it may, Paul has kept both of us alive. And we owe Paul a lot of gratitude. And then Paul, of course, gets to have free question and answer period with Ted and Bob about theological issues, which he loves to talk about. So we've had a marvelous friendship and collegiality over these years. And in recent years now, I retired officially, but I still do a little bit of teaching and research. Bob, I don't know what's going to happen. Bob's not teaching in the fall, but I don't know if you mentioned teaching the next spring or not, but I hope so. And stuff like that. We've got a few graduate students yet to do some shepherding. But I think beyond that, I'm not too sure. I think in a year or two, we're going to talk about what's going to happen with the future of the journal, Theology and Science. And there was one other thing I did want to mention, and that is the Bobisms. We did, for a period of about 8 or 10 years, have a slate of graduate students whose firm commitment was to be sure to be laughing 13 hours a day. And they found things funny that we had not noticed were funny. And, one of them were Bobisms. And they started collecting Bobisms because Bob would come up with certain things that he would say that became memorable and repeated. Now, some of them were formal, such as NIOTA, right? Non-interventionist objective divine action. All right, good. And then Uriah, I think it was, that used CMI. Come on, what is it? Creative mutual interaction. Okay, the one that I like, because Bob and I developed this together, even though it was his basic insight, is Finland. Does anybody remember Finland? What is it?
First instantiation of the new law.
The first instantiation of the new law of nature. Or Finland, NC. The first instantiation of the new law of the new creation, right? Jesus' Easter resurrection is a Finland, or a Finland. A Nyota, where God acts at the level of the electron or the photon, which to the scientist looks like it's indeterminate. When God acts there, God is exacting divine providence in an invisible yet effective fashion. So one might want to say, well, who cares what happens down there in the electron? What about you and I? You and me here as physical bodies. The body's answer is, well, your bodies are made up of atoms. Here comes the Bobism. Atoms may be small, but they're everywhere. And some of the students love the Bobisms. Well, at any rate, the students over the years have come to love you, Bob. They respect you, they love you, and as has already been mentioned by looking at these champion scholars that we have here in this room, they are your progeny, they are your bequest to the future. And I have a hunch those Bobisms are going to last longer than you do. And thank you so much for your and my collegial partnership and friendship over these years. I am genuinely blessed by all of this.
Thank you all so much. It's getting late, I'll be very short. I'm going to tell two stories that are very personal and challenging for me because it's probably put voted to the GTU. One story was when my dad died, I was 12, and I invited my minister over to talk about that. And I asked, will I see my Father in heaven? And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, Bob, because of science, we don't believe in heaven anymore. The second one was my mom and dad fell in love, wanted to get married. Dad was Italian, so he was Catholic. Mom was Episcopalian, so she was Swedish Episcopalian. And they went to the priest because they weren't married in the Catholic Church. And the priest said, you can't marry unless Arden converts. Mom cried, Dad got mad, and they went to the vow for civil service. That's why I love the GTU. Because at its foundations, it is ecumenical. I've never been in an event or a class here or experience that is dogmatically Catholic or Protestant. It's always open-endedly agape-filled community. It's a treasure. Speaking for one that comes before Vatican II and entered this world. So thank you, GT. And about the minister who said we don't believe in heaven anymore. Well, that set me on a quest through college, university, teaching at Carleton College where I met Ian. I went there because I wanted to meet Ian. And, you know, trying to find a way to bring these two communities together while respecting the differences. So CMI. And I'm so grateful for 40 years of doing that. For my fantastic daughter students, whom I love as family. And for your students who are seeking tenure, who I think is my grandchildren. And I love my faculty colleagues. We've taught together, we've been in committees together, we've been on searches together. We've spend time together as friends. I'm so grateful for the collegial fellowship, the friendship, and conversations from which I've really learned my theology. I'm especially grateful, again, to my doctoral students because I'd always say to them, look, I'm happy to work with you, but you have to know I have two limitations. I don't speak German. I speak calculus. But I don't. And second, I don't have a PhD in theology. You're going to have one. But what I'll do is I'll study the same theology you're studying. I'll read the theologians with you. And together we'll figure it out. And in that process, I've got 40 PhDs. I'm going to hope in the next year or so to bring the threads of my very specialized questions together into a much more readable kind of publication that we can use in church and seminary. I'm looking forward to staying with my best friend Ted and talking about them and supporting each other. I'm most grateful for my family, Christy and Lisa, our daughters. Most especially for Charlotte. We met in a class on Paul Tillich in 1968. We never met blind free. We were married a year later. It's been 53 years of utter joy and bliss. I'm so grateful. So let me close with a wonderful saying from Dag Hammarskjöld. Thank you. To all that's past, thank you. To all that's ahead, yes. Thank you.
Can you believe it? It's 7 o'clock. But you don't need to run away. There's a fair amount of wine that's poured. And thank you so much, GTU staff, for giving us this support, making this evening a wonderful event. And the good news is we don't say goodbye to Bob and Charlotte. He becomes
Emeritus.
Would you pronounce that again, please? Emeritus. All right. Thank you, Dr. Emeritus.